Hammer of the Gods. Writings of Nietzsche. Selected and translated by Stephen Metcalf. Introduction. Quote, even when the heart bleeds. Section 3. The will to the end, / on the art of dying, / the thirst for revenge, / the new idol. It is here that Nietzsche's vivisection of humanity is driven towards the black hole at the source of Western modes of evaluation, radiating pessimism in all directions, sucking all matter and energy into its nihilistic core. Everywhere, throughout the course of the last 2,000 years, the active mode of evaluation, the will that constantly goes into combat with its own highest achievements, has been crushed in the dense mass of reactive force. Suicidally seductive black body radiation, the will that fixes everything in place and wants the end. Too feeble to stand on its own terms, the will to the end is not destined to triumph as a superior force. Reactive force only ever fights back against active force, evaluating it out of existence, in terms of its manifest image in the mirror of some tangle of reactive forces. It restricts, limits, and negates, and only then, after this arduous work of negation, does it find a substratum of strength available to it to affirm itself, always in terms of what it is not, Inversion of the evaluating I, where, increasingly, nobility, the abundant largesse of active force, can only see itself reflected in the spectacular regime of the chandala. The jaundiced eye overcodes all the other organs, a trap which lures the masters into the grey, negative mesh of an anorexic economy which constitutes itself by externalizing its self-loathing. Ascetic ideals, guilt, bad conscience, and resentment, the thirst for revenge, This point informs all Nietzsche's critique of Darwinism, since, quote, it has always been necessary to protect the strong from the weak, close quote. Notebook fragment. The dialectical mechanisms of Christianity, all the masks of its self-hate, enables the slaves to defeat the masters, maintain socio-political domination, and profit from the emergent bourgeois economy, while always remaining slaves. Revenge and reaction. Retaliation drawn out across millennia and cloaked in egalitarian sentiments like, quote, love and, quote, justice, reverse all noble values in initiating an equalization process. The will to, quote, breed an animal with the right to make promises, close quote. Genealogy of Morals. A creature which remains faithful to its obligations with or without the intervention of God. A creature that understands that if it breaks its promises, it will face all the painful consequences of its treason. In this, its creative, revolutionary phase, slave morality calculates by means of subsuming all economic exchange under the mercantile contractual relationship between creditor and debtor. Everything has its equivalent. Everything can be paid for. Somehow, everything will be paid for. What follows is a wholesome carve-up of the body, its organs all plugged into primitive machineries of cruelty, the pain machine, which codes and legislates the relative value of the various body parts in an economics of amputation. Both creditor and debtor are swallowed by an immense digestive system which marks the body according to the postulates of a regime constituting the organism as such, i.e., as a despotism governed by the bad conscience/consciousness of reactive modes of evaluation, and its insertion into the community. Organs energized by their coupling to the pain machine have a memory constituted for them, a memory burned into all the circuits of the organism, which still strains towards the terminal state where all processes and becoming end, once and for all. Perpetual present and paradise which only thinks of its past agony as a reference outside itself. You will suffer, not for what you might do in the future, but for what you did in the past. all by means of this formula. Injury done equals pain to be suffered. Revenge as, quote, justice, as, quote, good, tarantula venom, washed around the mouths of, quote, virtuous, bracket, which is to say, functional, close bracket, members of the community. With a few basic ideas rendered inextinguishable by means of their coupling to ascetic mnemotechnics of sacrifice before the threat of pain, guaranteed by the twin hydra heads of religion and the state, all that which cements the community together in glacial inertia guarantees the initiation of an entropic process of degeneration. The will to power declines in that it is no longer capable of waging wars against its own highest achievements. It no longer drives out beyond itself, and is content to light fires in the cold of morning to comfort itself in the darkness of its ice age. It rests in escalating stupidity, in decadence, in passive nihilism. Assuming that nothing new is possible, the looming, shadowy mechanisms of the pain machine, covering all the exits from the community, the despotic regime of equals. Reactive force results in a complex security system, policing itself from top to bottom, bracket, from the state down to the individuated being, close bracket. Equalization processes operate as an apparatus of capture, drawing everything toward its insertion into this communitarian body as an expedient organ. With everything attracted towards this black hole and expressed, analyzed, and judged in terms of interlocking gridworks of reactive forces, one would not delude oneself too far in noticing something of the exhumed remains of God, guaranteeing this transcendental authority. An atheistic religion for the necromancers of the modern age, the authoritarian backwash behind all questioning. The face of God on the white wall, the effigy of Christ on the death shroud, the theological grammar arresting the sanctity of being. Ariadne's incessant demands for recognition, her matriarchal body administering the passage out of life by means of a silver thread. Bracket. She kisses her seal on the underworld, old mother death, close bracket. Even the overman, the emergent heuristic dream of active forces, hatches out of the rotten yolk of a basilisk's egg, sparkling tears from heaven dissolving the afterbirth. As the maggot man, the ultimate pale, ill-constituted, decadent failure, learns to croak a few of Nietzsche's hook lines as founding dogmas of the 1,000-year Reich. The European cesspool echoes with the fearful, ridiculous cry of this limitless, reactive, nationalistic killing spree, quote, "Long live death!" in the ruins where murder and suicide swirl together in a vortex of nihilism. The state outlaws all active force that cannot be merged with its military pain machines. No one will ever be legally permitted to live by their own rules. The war machine of active force, which hurls into combat with the evaluation and enforcement systems of the Ice Age, will always be equated with evil. But what of it? Better to die than live here, bracket, on condition that death is at the right time, close bracket. In the embers of twilight, where the sun of enlightenment, bathed in dark matter, is blotted out in the pitch black of empty space, the magnitude of Nietzsche's treason against the species becomes brutally apparent. Resentment, the bad conscience, nihilism, and the will to the end are not just physiological traits of some profound sickness, but the foundations of humanity in man. Bootstrapped into existence by the turbulent eruption of great politics, the declaration of a nuclear war to the death against all the cellular enclaves of the organism, active force fights against the nature of humanity as such. No longer content to feed all life into an insatiable digestive system of ideas, which judges against it by means of all the somatic tribunals of a transcendental regime and its enforcement agencies, philosophy becomes a catabolic accelerator, increasingly amnesiac with regard to all that has happened before and learning to live for all that is yet to come. a kind of active nihilism emerging from degeneration, bent on destroying the organic security of the present, only to gamble on a plunge into the labyrinth of an incalculable figure. More experiments, more living on the edge of constant danger. The philosopher as a war machine. Quote, I sometimes think that I lead a highly dangerous life, since I am one of those machines that can fall apart, close quote. Letters. But what does that biographical entity, tattooed with the patronymic, quote, Nietzsche, matter? Except as a singular, intensive zone, drifting like a refugee through the eternal return, conducting a vortical flow which tears down the frosty veils of Christian morality in order to confront all the joys and horror of life head on. The disgust you feel as you re-emerge from a general economy of base matter, stripped of its beautiful soul, subsides as your body processes the intensity and starts to learn. Understanding is no longer enough. Transvalued, the Antichrist turns to you and smiles.
Hey, buddy. Mr. Beaver. Hello. Hello, Mr. Beaver. How are you doing this evening, sir? Right there. I could literally reach out and pet him. Probably chomp my fucking hand off, but